Welcome to Joy in Our Town. My name is Erin Hartwell, and I'm your host for today. Today we have here Miss KWine. She's the Executive Director for RiverAction. Miss Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're very knowledgeable of RiverAction. What drives your passion for this work?
Well, we have, I think, a need for, everyone has a need to get to the water. It's just innate. We're like crabs in that way. We love it. And when we started RiverAction 31 years ago, there was very little access to the river. Businesses had their backs to it. There were fences up where we could see maybe a bike trail eventually. We started with Ride the River, and that gave people a chance to see what it's like, because we coned off all the river drives because there were no bike trails except for 2 miles on the Ben Butterworth Parkway in Moline. But that was just enough for us to see what could be. And when we saw other cities doing those kinds of things, why can't we do it? And so we started raising money and having events, and we still like doing that. It's a way to connect people to the river. If we don't, then the river doesn't get protected, and we need a resilient river. We have so many needs with the pollution and the kinds of things that wall people off from the river. We need to keep that in front of us, and the more friends we have, the more citizens that get involved, the more it's apt to happen.
That's right.
You know, we try to educate the public with education programs, so on. For example, we have a golf cart tour on these bike trails and various routes. 5 different routes on one day, 3 different times during the day for 1,000 seniors to get out to see the river close up. If they don't ride a bike, they may not do that. They vote. They need to know how to be an advocate for the river and cleaner water.
So today we're going to talk about RiverAction's bridge project and how it works in Davenport.
Right.
What is it?
Well, it's on an original embankment, which in itself is a miracle, because most of the treasures like this, an 1856 embankment for the first original railroad bridge, is bulldozed down for good reasons, sometimes because those are economic development reasons. Development is a priority, and sometimes those, if they're not being used anymore, are gone. But this one still exists, and there's, in fact, still a rail sticking out from the first railroad bridge that is on that embankment. And when we realized what we realized we had to do something with that iconic piece of history.
Yeah, that's a historical
that was
significant.
The beginning of our deciding to reconstruct a part of the bridge too. The bridge itself can be built off-site, so it could be built in the winter, and then you slide it on. You slide it over the highway from this original embankment to one that is built in River Heritage Park. I didn't mention that this connects not only trails, but it connects to a new park in Davenport, which has already endorsed the idea of having river heritage and history as a focus. They will have signage that points to the Davenport House on the Rock Island Arsenal Island, and they will talk about the LeClaire House, which is right behind, and on these vantage points you'll be able to see these historic, iconic things, as well as the original bridge.
Okay, well, what kind of connectivity will the bridge provide for existing trails?
Well, we have grand trails on both sides, actually, but on the river side we have the Mississippi River Trail and we have the American Discovery Trail. And so this connects those at the new YMCA going in a few years, the new loft apartments that are on the north side of River Drive, other businesses and commercial interests on that side. So it creates a safe passage across a very busy U.S. highway, US 67, as well as railroad tracks. And you might say, is that going to be up high enough to get over trucks and trains and so on? It is. That's another fact that's kind of a miracle. This embankment is 30 feet above the highway, and we only need a 21-foot clearance for DOT and railroads. So we're really confident that our bridge is a great way to get across the river, but as well, it's a part of history, and reconstructing the original bridge is what we want to do.
Okay, so what about the social and economic impact will it have for the community?
Okay, that is where I think the history comes in. There's so much interest in railroad history. This was the gateway to the West, this first bridge. So that in itself is something to celebrate. We know that it was the start of the Transcontinental Railroad. It was the beginning of the Granger trains that went to Chicago with for markets with grain and livestock and so on. The first gateway to the West is not in St. Louis. That's for the Lewis and Clark history. This is, in the nation, the first gateway to the West.
So you can expect some cultural tourism.
That's right. River heritage tourism, cultural tourism, all of that is of interest. And as well, this story of the first bridge, which I can elaborate on a little bit, was the first and the largest project of Abraham Lincoln, the biggest case of Abraham Lincoln, because the settlement in this case and the decision made by the Supreme Court that when it was contested by the steamboats that they should not be able to build a bridge across the railroad, across the river, then it went to court because the steamboat did not want the bridge built and rebuilt. They had caused the bridge that was originally built in 1856 to burn 2 months after it was up and going. And they said that it was an impairment to river transportation. But the Supreme Court agreed with Abraham Lincoln on this case, and the railroad was able to build again. And so 2 years later, the bridge was rebuilt and on the same berm.
Now, RiverAction has had, large things going on, tons of projects. What makes this one, so different, and what are the results of the other ones?
Well, that's something I like to point to as far as some of our credibility. I think it comes from the fact in 1988 we lit the Centennial Bridge, and our effort was to also include enough funding for maintenance for years, and that has happened.
Okay.
Now that's 25 years ago, 26 years ago, 27 years ago, and we are still doing all the lighting maintenance on that bridge. We're not asking for any state or local municipal funding for any of that. Okay. So there's a place for private initiatives, which RiverAction can take. We can take a risk where sometimes municipalities cannot. We did that with the Channel Cat when we started that and bought the boat and started the program. That was a risk we could take. It was successful. We were able to hand it over 3.5 years later to Metrolink, debt-free. But it's how we can be a catalyst to make some change, make things happen, get some things going that perhaps government can't.
What's the timetable for this bridge completion?
Well, we have a timetable that is going to be driven by funding. And we know that the bridge itself, that we're only building one span of it. There were 5 spans on the original one that went across the river to Rock Island. This span is one of the 5. It's 255 feet, but accurately a replica of the original. That span is going to cost $3 million. So we're going out.
I was going to ask that budget.
Right. We're going out after that amount of money. Some of it will be identified in rec trail grants from the Iowa DOT and also the U.S. federal DOT for recreation trails, not funding that goes to roads and bridges, but for recreation trails, which both those government entities have. And when we go out for that, we're interested in matching it with some local funding, of course, and they're interested too. Do we have that kind of support in the community? So we have found that yes, there is. The recreation bikers that are going to use it, the pedestrians, and so on. There is that interest.
Well, how can we get the viewers to see what you guys have going on, like your website and all that good stuff?
Yeah, that's what we want, is to share that. First of all, our website is riveraction.org. We have a membership organization. We're a citizens group. We're on a street where everybody can find us on River Drive, so walking in the front door is a good way to come. But to go to our website,
All right. So any closing thoughts you'd like for our viewers to know?
Well, we are at the beginning of our First Bridge campaign, and there's a special place in the heart for those that step up first. So any of those people that want to help support this grant, that's where there'll be a special place in our heart.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kathy, for joining us here on our show.
Thank you. I enjoyed it very much. It was my pleasure.
All right. And viewers, thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back with Join Our Town.
Imagine a place where you can see the Bible come to life. From the Garden of Eden and the historic land of Israel, through the life of Jesus, to the glory of heaven. Imagine yourself at the Holy Land Experience in Orlando, Florida. Imagine ancient Israel through the Wilderness Tabernacle, the streets of Jerusalem, and the Great Temple. Imagine living in the days of David and Bathsheba, one of the Old Testament prophets, or the Apostle Paul. Imagine seeing the transforming power of Jesus come to life in those you've only read about. Imagine being an eyewitness to the life of Jesus, his miracles, his love, his sacrifice, and his final victory. Imagine being in the upper room for communion, following Jesus into baptism, walking through historic and peaceful gardens, or praying at the Wailing Wall. Imagine seeing the great scenes from the life of Jesus depicted in stunning fashion. Imagine the journey of God's Word through the ages, from tablets to scrolls to the printing press. Imagine the life and work of angels yesterday and today. Imagine being in the ark or the belly of a whale, crossing the Red Sea, or walking on the water with Jesus. Imagine this. And then see it at the Holy Land Experience in Orlando, Florida. Plus, miracle moments, the Jerusalem model, Bethlehem, the Jesus boat, the Stations of the Cross, special guest speakers and musicians, the stunning Church of All Nations Auditorium, and the crystal living waters. Can you imagine it? Then live it. Imagine yourself at TBN's Holy Land Experience in Orlando, Florida.
See these hands? They grip the wheel of a Humvee in Afghanistan.
These hands? 6 years treating soldiers.
12 years flying choppers.
We know you're strong, but sometimes you need a helping hand. You served us. Now let us serve you. The Iowa City VA Healthcare System.
Got a new TV, computer, or cell phone? Waste Commission of Scott County will properly recycle your old e-waste, so don't worry about your data and information. Not sure what items are considered e-waste? It's simple. Anything with a screen or circuit board. No appointment necessary. Just stop by our e-waste facility to drop off your items. The best part? It's free for Scott and Rock Island County residents. E-waste recycling. Good for the environment, easy for you. Not sure what to do with all those paint cans, cleaners, and other harmful items under the sink and in your garage? This material poses a health risk and is harmful to the environment, so it can't be thrown out. Go to wastecom.com and make an appointment to bring in your hazardous material. We will dispose of it properly, and here's the best part. It's free for Scott and Rock Island County residents. Proper disposal of hazardous material. Good for the environment, easy for you.
Welcome back to Join Our Town. I'm your host, Erin Hartwell, and we have back here Miss KWine. She's Executive Director for RiverAction. Welcome back, Miss Kathy.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about ways to reduce storm water runoff and flooding. Tell us about that. How can we get that going actively?
Okay, there are lots of things citizens can do, and cities. So we have a lot of programs going, and we have a lot of suggestions, a lot of best practices. We even wrote a book called 6 Simple Things You Can Do to Save the Mississippi River, because it is that runoff that is uncontrolled sometimes that causes the pollution and the flooding that we experience on the Mississippi.
Okay. Tell us about the urban flooding and how it can, it makes a big impact on the community.
Well, there's so much impervious surfaces and lots of malls and rooftops and driveways and so on and streets that are causing the rain to go into a drain under the streets, under the city, out of sight, out of mind kind of.
And the soil.
And it's going right into the river.
All that erosion can be a problem.
And erosion is a problem too.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't have my eureka moment about Retain the Rain until I heard a speaker one time talk about what this area used to be like when it was a prairie. That's when water went into the ground and percolated into the ground to the aquifer, and the streams and rivers were 55 degrees and clean.
Wow.
Because that root system and that landscape was cleansing water as it went through, as it percolated through, infiltrated through to the aquifer. Now, we can't go back to planting prairies everywhere, but we can do certain things that imitate that, and that's what the Retain the Rain program is about. Taking water, retaining it where it falls, putting it into a substrate of rock or soils, or in some cases in a rain garden, those long-rooted plants that were a part of the prairie, and letting the water percolate into the ground, into the aquifer, and not run off.
Now, what about the urban community, like as far as the design of it? How is that like creating a problem?
Well, it is, let's start with the suburban, and then I'll move to the urban.
Okay.
But a lot of people think, I have a grass lawn, that's where the water's going, it's not going to be causing runoff. Well, it does. Because as I mentioned, the long-rooted plants are what causes the infiltration. 6 inches is all that exists with turf grass. Just 6 inches. So most of the rain runs off. So we're not retaining it on a lawn like that. And so what we need to do is, in crevices in our lawns where water or the soils remain a little bit damp, that's where a rain garden can go. That's where you can plant the long-rooted plants. And there are lots of them to choose from that are flowering and beautiful, grasses as well. When that happens, then there's less runoff from those properties. You can also put a rain barrel on the downspout, or 2 rain barrels, and with a half-inch rain, fill up a 60-gallon barrel and save that water from going into the storm drain and into the river and flooding. Okay. In the most urban areas, we have, again, these roofs that have runoff and so on. We can plant green roofs. We've got 2 of those that RiverAction did this last few years. One's on the McKesson building in downtown Rock Island, which was a reconstruction, refurbished roof. One was on a brand new roof, which was the police station in downtown Davenport. So it was built with aspects that couldn't maybe be available in all buildings, but they capture the gray water or the rainwater and move it through the building. And it goes into the plantings that are around the building. They flush toilets with it.
Wow.
That's how you can reuse and keep water from running into storm drains and into the river.
All right.
And anytime that you have a creek that's eroding, that's where the sediment leaves the creek bank, and it erodes and then gets into the river, and that's a problem.
Okay.
So, and then dredging is necessary to keep the navigation going. We want to keep rain where it falls.
What about the pollutants in it? What kind of things are contained in that?
In the water that comes off a roof, I mean, you have the asphalt, you have other things that might be part of the rain. We know that when it comes off of a lawn that has had too much fertilizer, and that gets into it. A lot of our agricultural fields have runoff as well, from feedlots to corn and soybeans, where they've been sprayed and or fertilized more than maybe necessary. But even if it was necessary, there are ways to capture it before it would be tiled and into the river. And those are things that farmers are starting to do, conservation efforts that involve cover crops, buffer strips along greenways. It does two things as well. If you look at those, they're habitat. You're going to bring back flowering things for bees. You're going to have habitat for birds. Other things, any kind of a greenway that runs through a farm does that as well. So there are ways to contain that pollution, and we're hoping that's what the citizen power is all about.
That's good. That's good. What about the myths or misconceptions that people may, you want to address about the waste?
I think it is that one person can't make a difference. That's a myth, because you can't. There are all kinds of things you can do on your property or support the city doing. Permeable alleys are a thing that is common in Chicago now, and that took money, but it took advocates for that kind of thing to convince the council and the city, Public Works, that that's what they wanted. There are lots of green roofs in that city as well. So those things can happen. Citizens can make that happen. So the apathy that might come with, I compost my garbage and I'm conservative on water, and those things are important, but there are other things they can do.
Now, what about retain the rain? What is that expression? What does that mean?
One of our volunteers, a very active citizen by the name of Chuck Astrite, came up with that. He's a wordsmith and a writer.
Retain the rain.
Retain the rain. But that's what it is. We could also say retain the snow.
Oh, yeah.
We could keep track of where the snow goes and make sure it's melting into places we want it to melt into, and not run off when it melts into the river. But retain the rain is about saving water and knowing what to do with landscape once you understand how water is cleaned.
Okay.
If you understand how it's cleaned and it goes through root systems and landscapes, like I described, then you are retaining it where it falls, and that eliminates runoff.
Now, what about homeowners? Tell the homeowners that are viewing today, and even businesses, what they can do about,
Right. There are little bioswales they can put alongside their driveway as the driveway comes down. It doesn't have to be an expensive altercation to the drive, but putting a substrate of rock down about 18 inches and then some soils on top of that and some plants, long-rooted plants on top of that, or just permeable pavers.
Okay.
And you can put permeable pavers in the driveway itself.
I can
or
do that.
take just the end of it where it comes down and is caught. You'll notice on a permeable driveway, and you have a car parked on it, that following a half-inch rain, usually it's dry under the car because the water was soaked into the permeable parking, where a substrate of rock, all clean, you can't have it be any kind of rock that would, with water, make a strong bond. It has to be clean. It has to go right through it.
I did not know that.
And that would be something. And then we've sold 3,700 rain barrels. We sell them at our office all the time. And that's another thing a homeowner can do easily. Just connect their rain barrel to their downspout.
What other improvements with the water and the quality? How can we improve those techniques?
Well, it's. I think the practices are pretty well established, so adopting them is what we need to do. Having the will to do it, putting some money towards it. It's, for example, the green roof. If a business looks at that, and it'd be a business owner of the building that would look at that, and he says, "Well, the conventional roof is $10,000 for me to re-roof it, and a permeable green roof might be near $30,000. Well, that's 3 times more.
Yeah.
All right, but
it is.
In that period of time, it lasts 3 times longer. You have a reduction in the air conditioning and heating bills because the insulation is so much better on the roof that the savings start to come back for that owner. And
maybe not right away, but...
Not right away. But then most good investments in property don't come right away.
That's right.
And so those are the convincing arguments that we go to when we're talking to building owners and city municipal building projects and things like that.
Now, can people volunteer?
Yes,
assist?
we
Okay.
have a lot of efforts to volunteer. We have a lot of offers, I guess, or ways that they can volunteer.
And not just with one project, but with all of RiverAction.
Right. Oh, yeah. We're just coming up this month on the 30th. We have a cleanup at Green Valley where we're taking an area that needs to have a better restoration along the creek and along the river that there on the Rock River and the creek, and we need people to pull invasive weeds and small trees and things like that to make the riverbank better for the stream and for water entering Rock River. As we pull back the banks, then there's less erosion too, and so we're trying to do that as well because water can whip through a stream and take a lot of soil with it. But if you take it back, plant it with these prairie plants, that doesn't happen. So we're improving the floodplain, we're improving the overall greenway for habitat as well as clean water.
Well, I'm sure
You
viewers.
gotta think of the birds and the animals that are down there as well. And there are a lot of them. We just did a bio blitz down at Rock River 2 years ago, and we had 497 species of bugs, birds, animals, plants. I mean, the diversity is great in some of these areas, and we'll just be improving that by improving water quality.
Okay. Well, can you give us more information, or the viewers can have more information on where to go, how to get all that good stuff?
Yes, all our projects are on our website, RiverAction.org. You can click on Retain the Rain. You can look at a future project of your own by using our little calculator that's on there. Let's say you go home and you want to do a rain garden, and you put in 10 by 10. That'd be the size you wanted to do. It'll tell you very quickly how much water you can retain.
Wow.
So that's how you retain rain.
So recap us again, like tell me exactly how Retain the Rain works, just like a...
It's like a sponge. You're going to be taking water and absorbing it where it falls.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Miss Kathy. That was really, I'm like, wow. I didn't even know that retaining rain, it meant so much. And I think our viewers agree with me on that. And we thank you, Miss Kathy, for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me. It was very
giving
enjoyable.
us more knowledge about it. And we thank you, viewers, for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Join Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Join Our Town brought to your home every day. So write Join Our Town, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.
You're watching TBN, part of the Trinity Broadcasting family of networks.